Life has a way of breaking us, bending us, taking us places we never thought we'd go. We hold on to dreams, paint our futures in bright, bold colors, thinking we know what's best for us. We set our eyes on a prize, chase it with all we have, and when things don't go the way we plan, we crumble. We call it failure, we call it loss. But what if I told you that the very thing that broke you, the very thing that made you weep in the dark of night, was a step towards something greater? What if I told you that God's plans are always better than our dreams? That every detour, every delay, every disappointment is divine redirection? That the very thing you thought would destroy you was meant to shape you, refine you, prepare you for something far beyond what your human mind could conceive? I want you to think about a time when life did not go the way you planned. You had it all figured out. The vision was clear, the path was laid, the dream was within reach, and then, boom. The ground crumbled beneath you, doors slammed in your face, the people you trusted walked away, the opportunity you prayed for slipped right through your fingers, and in that moment, all you could do was ask, why? Why would God allow this? Why would he give you the dream, the hunger, the fire, only to let it be extinguished? We cry over broken dreams, but what we fail to see is that sometimes those dreams had to break because they were never meant to hold us. Sometimes the things we beg for, the things we are so desperate to have, are far too small for what God has in store. Sometimes our dreams are built on what we think is possible, what we think we deserve, what we think will make us happy. But God, he dreams in the realm of the impossible. He sees what we cannot see. He knows what we do not know. And he is not in the business of giving us what is good when he has something greater. I have seen people chase dreams that were never meant to be theirs. I have seen people cling to jobs, relationships, opportunities that were killing them only because they were too afraid to believe that God had something better. I have seen people settle for crumbs when God had prepared a feast. But let me tell you something. When God takes something from you, he is not punishing you. He is making room. When he says no, it is not rejection, it is redirection. You may not see it now. You may not understand why he closed that door, why he let that person leave, why he allowed the storm to come. But one day you will look back and realize that every no was making way for a greater yes. There are moments in life when we feel forgotten, moments when we feel abandoned by the very God we put our faith in. But hear me when I say this: God is never late. He is never absent. Even when it looks like nothing is happening, even when it feels like every step forward is met with 2 steps back, he is working. He is weaving together something so beautiful, so powerful, that if he showed you right now, it would take your breath away. I know waiting is hard. I know it is frustrating to watch others walk into their blessings while you sit there wondering when it will be your turn. But do not mistake delay for denial. Do not mistake silence for absence. Just because you do not see the way does not mean there isn't one. Trust that if God is making you wait, there is a reason. If he is withholding something, there is a purpose. If the dream you built in your mind has crumbled, then it was never the dream he had for you in the first place. Some of the greatest blessings in life come disguised as heartbreak. Some of the most beautiful journeys begin at the end of something we thought we could not live without. And if you need proof, just look back at your own life. Think about the things you once cried over, the things you once thought would break you. Did they, or did they lead you somewhere better? Did they mold you into someone stronger? Did they open doors you never knew existed? God's plans are not comfortable. They will stretch you, shake you, challenge you in ways you never expected. They will take you down paths that make no sense, through valleys that feel endless. But trust me when I say he knows exactly what he is doing. He is not just preparing the blessing for you. He is preparing you for the blessing. Because what good is a promised land if you are not ready to step into it? What good is a dream come true if you do not have the strength to carry it? So let go of the idea that your way is the only way. Let go of the belief that if it does not happen how you envisioned it, it is not meant to be. Stop mourning over what was and start looking toward what is to come, because the author of your story has never made a mistake, and he is not about to start now. You may not understand the journey, but trust the one who walks with you. You may not see the whole picture, but trust the one who painted the sky. Hold on, keep the faith, keep believing that what is ahead is far greater than anything you leave behind. Because when all is said and done, you will realize God's plans were always better than your dreams. Life has a way of making us believe that we are in control. We make plans, we map out our futures, we set timelines and expectations as if we have the final say in how things unfold. We convince ourselves that if we work hard enough, if we push long enough, if we want something badly enough, it must come to pass. And then life steps in, God steps in. He interrupts, he redirects, he rearranges everything we thought was set in stone, and we resist. Oh, how we resist. We cry out in frustration, questioning why things are not going the way we imagine. We plead for answers, for explanations, for reasons that make sense to our limited minds. But the truth is, we cannot see what he sees. We cannot know what he knows. And what feels like an obstacle to us is often divine intervention. What feels like a door slamming shut is sometimes God locking it so that we do not walk into something that would destroy us. How many times have you looked back and thanked God for the things you once wanted but never received? How many times have you realized in hindsight that what you thought was a loss was actually a blessing? We do not always recognize the hand of God in the moment. We do not always understand why he does what he does. But if we trust him, if we truly believe that he is who he says he is, then we must also believe that his plans are greater than anything we could dream for ourselves. But trust does not come easy. Faith is not always simple. There will be moments when doubt creeps in, when fear whispers in your ear, when you begin to question if you heard God correctly. The waiting season can feel unbearable. It can make you wonder if you are forgotten, if you have been overlooked. But listen to me, God does not forget his children. He does not abandon his promises. He does not start something he has no intention of finishing. If he is making you wait, it is because there is something being built in the waiting. There is growth happening in the unseen. You may not recognize it now, but the version of you that will step into the blessing is not the same version of you that first asked for it. We want things quickly. We want results, answers, progress now. But God moves at the speed of purpose, not at the speed of our impatience. He is more concerned with preparing you than pleasing you, more invested in your transformation than your comfort. You see, you can dream of a crown, but if you are not ready to carry the weight of it, it will crush you. You can dream of success, but if your character is not built to sustain it, it will destroy you. And so God delays, he teaches, he refines, he allows challenges, trials, even heartbreak, because he knows what is coming. He knows what you need to endure, to thrive, to be ready when the promise finally arrives. And when it does arrive, when you finally step into the place God has been leading you toward, you will realize that every single moment of confusion, every tear, every painful detour was necessary. You will see how every no was protecting you. You will see how every closed door was guiding you. You will see how the things you thought were breaking you were actually building you, and you will thank him. You will thank him for not answering certain prayers. You will thank him for the times he said no when all you wanted was a yes. You will thank him for the plans he had that were far greater than the dreams you thought you needed. But in order to get there, you must surrender. You must release the grip you have on your own plans and trust that God's hands are steadier than yours. You must learn to say, even if it does not happen the way I imagined, I still trust you. You must be willing to let go of your timeline, your expectations, your version of how things should go, and instead say, not my will, but yours be done. This is not easy. Surrender is not passive. Trusting God does not mean you sit back and do nothing. It means you move forward in faith even when you cannot see the whole picture. It means you take steps even when you do not understand where they will lead. It means you believe in his goodness even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Because faith is not about seeing, it is about believing. It is about knowing that even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the confusion, God is still in control. Think about Joseph. He had dreams of greatness, dreams given to him by God himself. But before he ever reached the palace, he was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, wrongfully accused, and thrown into prison. If you had stopped his story midway, it would have looked like failure. It would have looked like a series of unfortunate events. But God was working. Every setback was a setup. Every hardship was preparation. And when the time was right, Joseph was elevated and everything made sense. Think about Moses. He had a destiny far greater than he could have imagined. But before he ever led a nation, he spent 40 years in the wilderness, learning, growing, being shaped by God. It did not happen overnight. It did not happen on his schedule, but it happened on God's. And what about you? Maybe you feel like you are in the pit. Maybe you feel like you are wandering in the wilderness, waiting for something that seems so far out of reach. Maybe you feel like the dream you had, the thing you hoped for, is slipping away. But let me remind you, God does not waste anything. He does not let his children wander without purpose. If he is allowing you to go through a season of waiting, a season of uncertainty, a season of difficulty, then trust that he is using it for your good. Trust that he is setting you up for something beyond what you could have imagined. We often think that when things do not go our way, we must have done something wrong. We think that unanswered prayers are a sign that God is displeased with us. But sometimes God withholds things not because he is punishing us, but because he is protecting us. Sometimes the thing we want so desperately would have been the very thing that kept us from our true calling. So do not fight what God is doing in your life. Do not resist the process. Do not mourn over things that were never meant to stay. Instead, open your hands. Surrender. Trust that the one who created the heavens and the earth, the one who knows the beginning and the end, is writing your story with precision and purpose. You may not see it now, but one day you will understand. One day you will look back and see how every disappointment was actually divine direction. One day you will see how every closed door was leading you somewhere greater. One day you will realize that the dreams you had, as beautiful as they were nothing compared to the plans God had for you all along. And when that day comes, you will not regret a single detour. You will not wish for the things you once cried over, because you will finally see what God saw all along. You were always meant for something greater. Life does not always unfold the way we imagined it would. We are taught to dream big, to set goals, to chase after the things we believe will make us happy. From the time we are young, we begin to picture our future, crafting it in our minds like a masterpiece that we believe is destined to come true. We hold on to visions of success, love, and fulfillment, believing that if we work hard enough, if we pray long enough, if we want it badly enough, it will all fall into place, just as we planned. But life has a way of shaking us, of reminding us that we are not the authors of our own stories. There comes a time in every person's journey when they are faced with a reality they never expected. The job they thought would bring them security suddenly disappears. The relationship they believed would last forever falls apart. The door they knocked on with all their might never opens. And in those moments, it is easy to feel lost, confused, abandoned even. It is easy to wonder why God would allow dreams to crumble, why he would plant desires in our hearts only to leave us standing in the ruins of what could have been. But what we fail to see in those moments is that God's plans are always greater than our dreams, even when they do not feel like it. We spend so much time chasing what we think will fulfill us, not realizing that sometimes what we want is far less than what God has in store. We dream within the limits of our own understanding, but God dreams beyond our comprehension. We see the present, but he sees eternity. We see obstacles, but he sees the path being cleared. We see heartbreak, but he sees transformation. And that is why we struggle, because we are holding on to what we think is best when God is trying to give us what is truly meant for us. Think about all the times you were sure you knew what was best for you, the times you were convinced that if only this one thing happened, your life would be complete. The times you pleaded with God to make something work, to answer your prayers exactly the way you asked. But what happened? Did every dream come true? Did every plan unfold perfectly? Or were there moments when you were met with disappointment, when things did not go the way you expected, and yet somehow life continued? Somehow the things you once thought would break you became the very things that built you. The moments that made no sense at the time led you to places you never would have reached on your own. God's plans are not meant to fit into our logic. They are not meant to follow the blueprint we have designed. They are meant to lead us where we are truly supposed to be, even if the road there looks different from what we imagined. Sometimes that road is paved with delays, with heartbreak, with moments that make us question everything. But just because something is painful does not mean it is not purposeful. Just because it does not look like what you wanted does not mean it is not exactly what you need. It is hard to trust in the middle of uncertainty. It is hard to believe that the closed doors are blessings when all you feel is the sting of rejection. It is hard to hold on faith when the waiting seems endless, when you see others stepping into their dreams while yours seem to be slipping further away. But let me remind you, delay is not denial. Silence is not absence. Just because God has not moved in the way you expected does not mean he is not working. Some of the greatest miracles happen in the moments when it feels like nothing is happening at all. When we surrender to God's plans, we begin to see the beauty in the unexpected. We begin to understand that the detours were not mistakes, but divine interventions. The things we thought we lost were actually making space for something greater. The endings we mourned were necessary to make way for new beginnings. And the waiting, as painful as it was preparing us for the moment when everything would finally align. But surrender is not easy. It requires us to let go of our own timeline, to release our grip on what we thought was meant for us. It requires trust. The kind of trust that says, even if I do not understand, I will still believe. The kind of trust that says, even if it does not happen the way I planned, I will still have faith. The kind of trust that says, even if I have to walk through uncertainty, through disappointment, through seasons of waiting, I know that God is leading me somewhere greater than I could ever take myself. We often think that God's blessings will come in the way we imagined, wrapped in perfection, arriving exactly on time. But God does not operate on human schedules. He is not concerned with making things easy. He is concerned with making things right. He is not interested in quick fixes. He is interested in lasting purpose. And sometimes what is right takes time. Sometimes what is meant for you cannot be rushed. Sometimes the things we think we are ready for require us to grow, to change, to become the kind of person who can carry the blessing when it finally arrives. Look at the lives of those who walked before us. Joseph had a dream of greatness, but before he could step into his destiny, he had to endure betrayal, false accusations, years of imprisonment. David was anointed as king, but he spent years running for his life before he ever wore the crown. Even Jesus himself spent time in the wilderness before stepping fully into his purpose. If God did not rush their process, why do we believe he will rush ours? If he allowed them to go through seasons of waiting, of struggle, of refinement, why do we think we should be exempt? We have to trust the process. We have to trust that God is not just preparing the blessing, he is preparing us for it. He is molding us, stretching us, making sure that when the promise comes, we are ready to receive it. Because what good is a blessing if we do not have the strength to carry it? What good is a dream if we are not prepared for the responsibility that comes with it? So do not despise the waiting. Do not curse the detours. Do not spend your days mourning what could have been when God is trying to lead you toward what is meant to be. What is ahead is greater than what is behind. What is coming is better than what was lost. The dreams you once clung to may have seemed beautiful, but they were only a glimpse of what God truly has for you. There will come a day when you will look back and see the fingerprints of God in every moment of your journey. You will see how every setback was actually a setup, how every delay was divine protection, how every disappointment was paving the way for something greater. And when that day comes, you will not wish for the things you once begged for. You will not regret the prayers that went unanswered, because you will finally understand you were never being denied. You were being redirected. You were never being punished. You were being positioned. And the plans he had for you from the very beginning were always better than your dreams. Life has a way of humbling us. It has a way of taking everything we thought we knew and turning it upside down. We spend years shaping our vision of the future, believing that if we follow a certain path, if we make the right choices, if we check off the boxes, then everything will fall into place. And then, just when we think we have it all figured out, life reminds us that we are not the ones in control. Doors close, relationships end, opportunities disappear, and suddenly we are left standing in the middle of broken expectations, wondering where it all went wrong. But the truth is, nothing went wrong. It simply did not go our way. And just because it did not go our way does not mean it was not going the right way. We see through the lens of the present, through the limits of our own understanding. But God sees it all. The beginning, the middle, and the end. He sees what we cannot. He knows what we do not. And so he moves in ways that often do not make sense to us. He leads us down roads that feel unfamiliar, through seasons that feel uncomfortable, all because he is taking us somewhere greater than we ever could have reached on our own. But because we cannot see where the road leads, we resist. We try to hold on to what is familiar, to what we understand, to what feels safe. We cling to our plans because they are all we know, and the thought of letting go feels like stepping into the unknown. But faith is not about seeing. Faith is about trusting. It is about believing that even when things do not make sense, God is still leading us. There will be times when the journey feels unfair, when it feels like everyone around you is stepping into their dreams, while yours keep slipping through your fingers. When you pray and pray, yet nothing changes. When you knock on doors, yet none of them open. And in those moments, it will be tempting to believe that you have been forgotten, that maybe God has overlooked you, that maybe you are not meant for the things you once dreamed of. But do not be fooled by what you see. Delay is not denial. Just because something is not happening now does not mean it will not happen. Just because you cannot see progress does not mean progress is not happening. Some of the greatest work God does in our lives happens in the unseen. Waiting is not wasted time. In a world that glorifies instant results, we have been conditioned to believe that if something does not happen immediately, it is not meant to be. But God does not work on human timelines. He is not interested in quick fixes or temporary success. He is interested in lasting purpose. And it requires seasons of stretching, of molding, of breaking away from the things that are not meant to go with you into the next chapter of your life. If God is making you wait, it is because He is doing something in you that is just as important as what He is preparing for you. Think about a seed buried beneath the soil. From the surface, it looks like nothing is happening, but beneath the dirt, there is movement, there is transformation. The roots are growing, the foundation is being laid, and at just the right time, the seed will break through the ground. But if you dig it up too soon, if you try to force it to grow on your timeline instead of its own, you will ruin what was meant to bloom in its perfect season. The same is true for you. If you try to rush the process, if you try to force something to happen before it's time, you may end up with something that is not fully formed, something that cannot withstand the storms that are sure to come. But when you trust God's timing, when you allow Him to move in His way, in His time, you will step into something that is not just temporary, but something that is strong enough to last. We must learn to release our grip on the things we thought we wanted. We must learn to surrender, not as an act of giving up, but as an act of faith. Surrendering does not mean we stop dreaming. It does not mean we stop hoping. It simply means we place our dreams in God's hands, trusting that if something is truly meant for us, nothing will stop it from coming to pass. And if it is not meant for us, then we can trust that something better is on the way. But the problem is, we want to know the ending before we trust the process. We want to see the full picture before we let go. But that is not faith. Faith is saying, I do not know where this road leads, but I trust the one who is leading me. It is hard to understand in the moment, but one day you will look back and everything will make sense. One day you will see why the doors had to close, why certain people had to leave, why the things you once prayed for never came to pass. One day you will see how every setback was setting you up for something greater, how every disappointment was actually divine protection. And when that day comes, you will not wish for the things you once begged for. You will not regret the seasons of waiting, because you will understand that God was never withholding anything from you. He was holding it for you, waiting for the right time, the right season, the right version of you to receive it. So do not be discouraged by what seems like a delay. Do not lose heart when things do not go according to your plan. Keep moving forward. Keep trusting. Keep believing that God is working even when you cannot see it. Keep reminding yourself that His plans are not just good, they are greater than anything you could have ever dreamed. And one day, when you finally step into what He has prepared for you, when you finally see the full picture, you will look back and thank Him for every single thing that did not go your way, because you will finally understand it was never about your dreams. It was always about His plan, and His plan was always better. Looking back, we begin to understand that every delay, every detour, every heartbreak was not a mistake. It was a step towards something greater. The dreams we once held so tightly may have seemed perfect in our eyes, but God, in His infinite wisdom, saw beyond our limited vision. He knew what we needed, even when we could not see it ourselves. When doors closed, it was not rejection, it was redirection. It was actually just wings of redirection. When things fell apart, it was not the end, it was the beginning of something better. Faith is not about seeing, it is about trusting. Trusting that even in the silence, God is working. Trusting that even in the waiting, He is preparing. Trusting that even when things do not go our way, they are still going the right way. And one day when His plan unfolds before us, we will realize that what He had in store was far greater than anything we could have ever imagined.